Okay, we're now starting our second part of decomposition. This is additive decomposition. You'll remember we've already looked at multiplicative decomposition. So the crucial issue, again, as you remember, as you can see, when we did multiplicative, the time series components, trend, seasonal, cycle, which appears to be repetitive but not. And remember, business cycles are troublesome for us because they are up and down. If we were sort of to draw that very quickly, a business cycle looks like this. Okay, and so one would think, oh boy, that's repetitive, and I shouldn't have any problems with that in terms of forecasting, but it's not true. The first problem we have with business cycles is we don't know how high they're going to be. So that's number one, amplitude questions. And the second question is what we call the turning point. That would be here. When do we turn up or when do we turn down? Calling the turn. We're also extremely, I guess, lack of a better word, we're not particularly good at being able to do that. So business cycles cause a problem for us, whether they're additive or multiplicative. And certainly common sense says if a lot of the components of the data are random, then it's going to be very difficult to define a pattern. So remember, the key issue for us in decomposition is pattern. Pattern is trend and seasonality. Trend and seasonality, okay? And in the case of multiplicative seasonality, remember we developed a concept for the trend, the moving average, and then we divided that into the actual data, leaving us the seasonal part. We're now going to do the same thing, but we're not going to divide, okay? This is additive pattern. So what we're going to do again is just like we did before. We set up our trend as the moving average. But now what we're going to do is subtract the trend out, leaving us the seasonal component. So the actual data minus our moving average. And remember, for quarterly data, it would be a 4-period moving average. And for monthly data, it would be a 12-period moving average. I'm going to subtract out that moving average, and that's going to give me our seasonal component, okay? So let's now take a look at how we're going to do that. So if you will remember, all right, again, the way we had it before, okay, I'm going to get my marker going. This is exactly, as you can see, this is exactly the same data that we had before. So again, remember, we have 16 observations of this time series going back. It's quarterly data. These are the actual data points. Notice this 117.175 is exactly what we had before in terms of the 4-period moving average. So we added 172, okay, 72, 110, 117, and 172, added them together, divided by 4 to get 117.75. And again, notice, as you remember from the last time, our last video, okay, our problem, of course, was that when we did this average this way, so let me come back up here and see where I lost my little marker thing. Hang on. Oh, here it is. I lost my little marker. Oh, no, anyway, so let me just come down here. All right, here's my marker. Okay, so remember now, when we added those together and we got our 118.25 right here, notice that was in between the second and the third quarter, no such quarter. So what we again did, as you'll remember, okay, is then we added this and this together to get our 118.25. So this guy here, making sure you understand, is here, all right? That guy there is here. That's between the second and third quarter. So when I take 72, 110, 117, and 172, add it up, divide by 4, I get 117.5. But that shows up at quarter 2.5. There isn't a quarter 2.5. But if I take the 117.75 and then I add that to the 110, 117, 172, and 76 divided by 4, which is 118.25. Add those two guys together. That gives me 118.75. And if I divide that by 2, I get 118.25. Then that it is exactly at the third quarter. Okay, so that's the issue that's there. Now, coming down here, now let's remember that we're additive, and let's change the color here so that we can see it a little bit better. So now notice this is my centered moving average right here, centered on quarter 3. So what am I going to do with it? I'm going to do exactly what I expect. Take the trend out. In multiplicative, I took it out by dividing. But in additive seasonality, I take it out by multiplying it, okay? So when I do that, not multiply it, but take it out, 117.25 from 118.75 gives me 1.25, and notice it's a negative. This is now my estimate of the trend for the fourth quarter of the first year here. I subtract that estimate from the original data. Notice this is not from here, it's from here, right? Okay, it's from here. So now I'm going to subtract, I'm going to subtract 119 from 172. What is it going to give me? 53. Remember, how did I get the minus 1.25? I took, and as we go back and look, so let's exactly see what we're doing. This in that first example that I gave you, this guy here, the y, in that first one that we calculated, is 117. Okay? What is the whoops, we lost something here. Okay, so what is our, let me get this thing to blow up again. Sorry, screwed this up royally. All right. So again now, so remember here, that's the 117. What does this turn out to be in terms of our trend? All right, in terms of our trend number, it turns out to be 118.25. So this guy here, okay, that guy there is 118.25. So let me highlight him. He's 118.25. So what do we get for our guesstimate of the seasonality at that point? It's minus 1.25. Now, let's look at the interpretation. Remember when we did multiplicative, remember we divided. So coming back up here, we divided. So everything was done in relationship to the trend. But now we're back to the actual levels of things, okay? We're at the levels of things. So this is now not being done in relationship to the trend. It's not being done in relationship to the trend. It's being done in terms of from the actual value. So notice now, this is actual numbers. So when I am looking at, so let's say this is barrels of beer. So what I am saying is now in our column 6 here, okay, that when I adjust for the seasonality, that the actual number of barrels of beer shipped because of seasonality is down 1.2. So it's off 1.2. So seasonality, okay, from the trend of the data caused us to lose either 1 million barrels or 1 barrel. Okay, so it's the actual shipments. So now look at my 53. What does that mean? That's saying that because of seasonality, can you see it? That because of seasonality, all right, I'm shipping about 53 bottles more, or 53 cans more, or 53 cars more, okay? So that's the interpretation there. Now, just as before, notice here, just as before, all right, we got all of these different estimates of the seasonality. How many estimates of seasonality do I want? I want one estimate of the first quarter. I want one estimate for the first, one for the second, one for the third, and one for the fourth. So notice here, notice in the first 4 quarters, 1, 2, 3, 4 are observations 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't have any seasonal estimates for the first and second quarter because I did that moving average. So notice now the only complete year, the first complete year I have is the second year. All right. So what I'm going to do now is take my estimate for the actual increase or decrease in shipments. All right, for the first quarter. So do you see it here? Here's my first quarter in the first year. That estimate is minus 50. Minus 40. Minus 44.87. See it here? That's my estimate. We'll come back to what the seasonal index is in a minute, what I had pointed to. This is my estimate. So let me change the color so you can see that where I'm highlighting it. All right. So this is now my estimate for the first quarter, and it's not doing what I want it to do. So let me come back here real fast. All right, we'll change the color real quickly. All right. So this now is my estimate here for the difference in seasonality in the first quarter, and notice now it corresponds to here. Let's go down now and look at period 9, which is the second first quarter that I have. It's minus 52. So that's there. This is here. All right. Now, let's look at the final complete first quarter that I have. It's period 13, and it's a minus 56.65, a minus 56.65. So what I'm going to do now is average those, okay, because I've got 3 of them. And then that's going to give me my single estimate for seasonality of the first quarter over the 4 years that I have. So let's go through this one more time so you can see it. All right, we'll change the color. Okay. Now, let's look at the second quarter. Our first estimate for the second quarter is here. So that's here. Okay. Our second estimate for the second quarter is down here, right? All right, by subtracting, that's here. And then our final estimate for the second quarter is down here, all right? So now what we're going to do then is add all of those estimates up for the second quarter, divide by 3, and we now have a single estimate for the second quarter, okay? So here are now our estimates for the entire sample of data that we have over the 16 observations. Those are our seasonals. Okay. Notice now, when I go from quarterly data and add up, I get annual data. And annual data is there's no seasonality. Therefore, this does not add up to 0. It should add up to 0. Okay. So since this does not add up to 0 here, since that doesn't add up to 0, what I'm going to do is take the average of this. Okay, I'm going to take the average of it, the mean. Okay, give a different color, which is down here. So this is the mean. Okay, and then what am I going to do with that? I am going to subtract it. Okay, I'm going to subtract it from each of these. So remember, we did a multiplicative adjustment when we did multiplicative. Now we're going to do an additive adjustment. Okay, so again, adding all of these up, that gives us a sum. Divide by 4 gives us this mean. Okay, and therefore I'm going to subtract. Okay, I'm going to take it. So notice now, here I've got a minus 51.167. From that, I'm going to subtract minus 365, and a minus is a positive. So now I get these numbers doing that, okay? Right? All of these numbers, those are my 4. When I add them together, I get 0. So why do I need it to be 0? Because when I go add up from quarters, I get to annual, and there's no seasonality in annual. Now, basically what I'm going to show you then, and how we're going to do it in class, we're not going to do it here because it's harder to do, but because we've had time doing this, you've been able to look at these, and we don't have to worry now about the basics. We can shift our attention to how to use it. We're now going to do columns 8, 9, 10, and 11, but we'll do it in class. Now notice, guess what I can do? Take a look here, okay? Take a look at this number here. This number was gotten by subtracting the minus 50.80, which is the seasonal number, subtracting it from the actual value. So if you will remember, so if I take the seasonal part out, which is here, which was that minus 50 roughly, and I subtract it from this, it should give me the trend, right? It should give me the trend. So again, this trend estimate here then is just simply the deseasonalized part. That's not how we got this. So I'm going to show you how we got this number 9 in class. But notice now what I've done here is deseasonalize the data. I've taken the seasonality out. So in class, we're now going to look at how we do this, okay? Because this is the forecast, okay? This is what we forecasted. So now that you know how we get the indexes, and now that you know how we deseasonalize, and by the way, now going back, you can clearly see, if this was multiplicative, how would I deseasonalize? I would take the seasonal index and divide it, right? I would take the seasonal index and divide it. So now what we're going to do is, given that you've got this background so that we know how to get the final adjusted indexes, whether they're additive or multiplicative, we know how to deseasonalize. Then in class, what I'm going to show you how to do is come up with a trend forecast that we can use, then the seasonality, and I don't know what it did to me here, hang on. Okay, show you how we will come up with our forecast, which is here. We will do that in class, okay? So a little rough today in terms of a couple of mistakes I made at the end, but I think you've got the basics. So we now know how to get our seasonal indexes in both additive and multiplicative. We know how to deseasonalize, and in class we're going to learn how then to take that deseasonalized information to come up with forecasts into the future.